Welcome to the Author to Authority podcast. And today I have with me Samantha King. And if you are an entrepreneur, then you do not want to miss this episode, as we are going to be talking about how to niche down in your business and why that is essential for success. Now, Samantha is a niche specialist and business clarity superstar, and she teaches busy Fempire Builders like herself the steps to get on track in their business, identify their niche, and map out opportunities to boost their sales, and work with them to implement the systems and processes that you need within your business so that you can work with clients that you truly love. And so I'm excited because this is a topic that's near to dear to my heart. It's a big part of my entrepreneurial journey. And so I'm excited to have Samantha on, and make sure you listen to the whole episode because you are just going to have your mind blown. So welcome to the show, Samantha.
Thank you so much for having me, Kim. I'm really excited to be here. And I love this topic, especially for authors and anybody, because it really is about storytelling, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. So actually, Samantha and I met at a networking meeting about a month ago, almost a month ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately her and I felt a connection. We started talking and we realized that we have a lot of same philosophies when it comes to being an entrepreneur and building a business. So I knew that we needed to have Samantha on the show. Now, before we get into all the wonderful expertise she's going to share with us today, though, I do want her to introduce herself. Samantha, and why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and your story?
Yes, I would love to. So, I mean, you talked a little bit about my bio and what I do, but I mean, my story really starts before that. And it starts, if I'm being honest, it starts right when I had kids, you know? And I guess my entrepreneur story starts there. And it's something I do talk about in the chapter I contributed to the book that we were talking about before, the Live Out Loud books. It really started with my second child and my bout with postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. And I had postpartum anxiety with my first child 4 years earlier, and that had been the reason, the catalyst I had to leave the teaching field, because my anxiety was so crippling. And I couldn't get into the classroom. And then when I had my...
and deal with a bunch of kids on top of that. Gee.
Yeah, who are also having, I say my story started at childhood, but these kids had their own stories as well, right?
Yes.
So when you can't be there for them in the way that they need, it's better to step aside, I feel.
Yes.
And 4 years later, here I was again. And it was, 10 times worse for whatever reason. I mean, every experience in our lives, whether it's every birth, every story that we go through, it usually is different. And this time it was worse different. And I found that, I found myself questioning whether I could go back to corporate or not. And my 4-year-old had just been diagnosed with autism on top of the postpartum depression I was having with my newborn. Yeah. So it was a very tumultuous time. And I ultimately decided I couldn't go back to corporate. So as I was trying to figure out, what's next, I founded Fempire Builders, which is an online training center for women in business. And again, just that, bringing that teaching to it, bringing that experience I have. I had previously been an educator. I had been in telesales and sales and marketing in the corporate world, and customer service management in the small business world. It's a running joke in my family that I probably have had a license for very many, many things, right? I've dabbled everywhere. And I brought all that together with the Fempire Builders Training Center, with our courses, and to my private clients where I do niche strategy with them and give them business clarity, helping them figure out those roadmaps to success. Bringing that all together, it was so important for me at that time in my life, because if I was going to be away from my kids, it needed to be doing something that really lit me up. that really got me excited about life. And working with these women, these female entrepreneurs is just so rewarding, in my opinion. I just love it. It lights me. I'm on fire, I feel.
Well, here's the thing. When you're suffering from any form of depression or anxiety or burnout or overwhelm, any of those things, one of the ways that you help to fight it is to do something that you love.
Mm-hmm. Right? Give you that reason to get out of bed.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So did you find that starting Fem Builders did help with the postpartum depression, or was there other things that you had to do to be able to conquer it?
Well, for one thing, I did visit my doctor, and I got medication, and that's something I tell people you have to do what's right for you. And for me, being on medication was very helpful. Mm-hmm. Starting Fempire Builders was good too, because it got me out of the house.
Yes.
And it got me out of my own head. One of the things that also really helped me was, just having structure, taking one day at a time, and having structure within each of those days. One of the things that I do talk about when I'm talking to women in business is that for me, it didn't, in my head, that structure, having a time for everything and everything in its place, like that didn't necessarily work for me, especially when it was time to go back, like when it was time to start up Fempire Builders and go back to work, in the sense that now I was working for myself. But people who have been off, whether it's for motherhood or any other reason, understand the back to work mentality. So I actually started organizing my life as a business. So every area of my life is a department, and I have goals for each of them, and I'm checking in on them constantly to move it forward, just like you check in on your marketing, your numbers, all that kind of stuff. Because that was really a lot more helpful for me than trying to have like a calendar for my personal life and a calendar for my business. And so I think if I had to say the things that really held me back on that journey, it would be those three things, getting out, being more than just mom for the day. Even though I do have social anxiety and it was nerve wracking, still getting out there, even if it was just to have coffee with one person, or heck, go to Chapters and, browse some business books while I'm there, anything to that gave me a purpose, a reason. Fempire Builders gave me a purpose or a reason to get out of the house.
Yes.
And then, really that wake up call with my scheduling, and I have no problem saying the medication too was very helpful.
Well, and sometimes you need it too. Like, do I think all depression needs medication? No, but I think there are times. And, for you too, there was probably also hormonal too. So probably part of that medication helped to balance out your hormones, so you didn't feel like you were like in, well, they call it postpartum depression, but it was probably like pre-menopause.
Right. It gets you're in my son was probably about 3 before I really felt a connection with him, which wasn't the same with my daughter, because it was more anxiety with her. But getting to that point, and I mean, medication isn't the only thing we do. We also have there's always talking to people and getting out there. But when you're in the thick of it, when you feel like, for me, I almost like, you feel like you want to jump out of a moving car, or for me, I would stand at the bathroom door, just waiting for my husband to come out of the bathroom, terrified one of the kids would need something, the medication to help you kind of get through that and get your mind through that. Because what happens is our mind starts to go to like all these futuristic possibilities, but our body reacts as if that's happening right this minute.
Yeah.
Right. And so to be able to calm my body down so that I could then stop my mind from, these circles it was reeling in, that was very important to me. And it was very helpful.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I know that will have been beneficial, especially for a lot of our female audience. Now, we want to talk today about niching down in your business. And there's several ways to say it. And I know I'm probably saying it the American way, but that's the way I learned it. But first of all, talk about that concept, and then we're going to get a little bit deeper into it.
I think the idea of niching down is really, some people find it counterintuitive because they're like, well, I want to help everybody. I want to help as many people as I can. But really, it goes back to that age old, if you stand for everything, you stand for nothing. And it's the same thing. If you try to help everybody, you're going to end up helping nobody, because people get confused. Yes. And it's not that you can't help as many people as you can. It's that you really can't be everything to everybody.
No.
And I think for women specifically, we need to really step into that and say, yeah, you know what? I can't be everything because that's how, for me anyway, I get to a point of overextended and overwhelmed. And it's almost like a cycle. I call it a cycle of it, where it just keeps happening to me. If I can't step up and say, look, I can't be everything to everybody. Right. And so I think that's where, but we always people feel like, well, then I might leave money on the table or whatever. But
actually, you're losing money.
Right? Because isn't it better to have 100 die-hard fans who are there to support you, to love on you, to share your message with other people, than to have 10,000 lukewarm fans that don't necessarily take action or have a lot of invested in you?
Yeah.
I would say that it is, right? Some less is more.
Yeah. And people don't realize that. They don't realize that by niching down and actually really focusing in on who is that target market that you can serve best. Mm-hmm. Any entrepreneur, but especially as women, when we're looking at not only our business, but our family responsibilities on top of it, you do not have time to be working with people who really are not going to benefit from what it is that you have to offer.
Exactly. And you're going to get to that point where, a lot of us left corporate because it wasn't working for us for whatever reason, but you're going to get to that point where your business is now no longer working with you because you're not working with the people who are lighting you up. You're not working with the people who you truly are here to help and serve.
Yes.
Right. And that's where we get to that point where we're like, and we get to that point of overwhelmed and overextended. We get to that point, where we almost fall out of love with our business because we're not serving the people that we feel, one, value us, and two, need us.
Well, that's the thing. When you're not working with the right people, it just becomes a hassle. Mm-hmm. When you've got those wrong people, they want to underpay you. They're demanding. They want everything. They want it now, but they don't want to pay you for it. They don't understand why you actually have to charge reasonable money for hard work, because most of the time it is hard work that you're doing. It's like sometimes with my clients, they don't realize that, there's hundreds and hundreds of hours and a whole team of people in my company that work together to put their book. So they don't see the fact that, I've got to pay these people, that there's a lot of quality that goes in there. There's a lot of time that goes in there. So I've gotten to the point that, I don't work with the clients that try and nickel and dime me down.
Because for whatever reason, they're not seeing the value, and you're not their person. There's somebody better out there to suit them, right? It's almost like dating. We had a great time, we went on a couple dates, but there's somebody better out there for you. And it's not me.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's okay. And I think as women, we struggle to feel like it's okay to say, you know what, this isn't working. This isn't going to work out, because a lot of the time, and this, I find, especially if we're talking about value and charging what we're worth, this really, I work with service-based entrepreneurs. So that's really where I see this, because when you have a product, I always say they have it a little bit easier than the rest of us, because they have actual hard costs involved. Where with service-based businesses, you're paying for what's in my head. You're paying for what's in between my ears. And sometimes that's a little bit harder for people to quantify, but I think for us as women, when we find the right people, and we know how to put that sales strategy in place and really build a business around the transformational process that our ideal client is going through, then we can actually find people who see the value because we are actually helping them the way we were meant to help people, and that the way that they need to be helped. Yes. And I think that's why when people get so uncomfortable with niching down, I tell them, like, there's the right person out there for you. There's the right ideal client out there for you. And they have friends, and those people have friends. And it's really about understanding who that niche is. And I call it putting on your ideal client hat. You know what I mean? Like really getting inside of their head and understanding them so that you can start showing up where they are, and messaging and your marketing can actually, you know, touch the pain points they're feeling. And your sales conversations and the way your business runs can all be catered towards them and what they need, and meeting them where they're at.
Well, that's the thing. When you find those really good customers and clients, you know, they do refer you to other people who are just like them, right? But the other thing too is I think sometimes, especially as women, we get this feeling of desperation because we're not bringing in the sales that we want. And so we feel like, you know, for the sake of the family, we've got to take on this client that we really don't want to take on for less than what we feel we're worth because we've got to bring in this money. But what happens is it just adds a lot more stress into your life. It doesn't solve a problem. It actually creates problems. And sometimes you just have to keep patient. And, you know, you're a sales and marketing person, so you'll understand this concept of sometimes it's better to say no and just keep filling your funnel, having those conversations, you know, connecting out to people, reaching out to people. You know, you do that a lot, you will find those good clients, and they are worth the wait.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, and I'm not saying to turn away clients who, you know, are 75% your ideal client, but the people who really, like, you know, guys, if you've got a love connection or not, right?
Yes.
But I think it's important, and people will say, you know, patience and is a virtue and all of those things. But it's also, when I say business clarity, I'm working with my clients on how to figure out how their business generates leads so that they can start showing up where their ideal client is wearing the hat that they want them to wear. So for example, if you want to talk to Samantha, the mom, getting me at a networking event isn't the right spot because I don't have my mom hat on. So I'm not going to connect in the same way I might have if you ran into me, you know, my kids are homeschooled, but if you ran into me at the school, because I'm at the school, I've got my mom hat on. It's very important. And that's why I say it's very important for us to put our ideal client hat on so that we can figure out where they're going to have the hat on that we want them to have. You really have to get into that mindset. And then you have to understand your business and how it generates leads and how your clients want to be met and what products and services they need along the transformational journey that they're going through that are going to help you. It's really, niching down is about more than just saying, I'm going to focus on this market. It's about really embracing that, your ideal client, really embracing that market and designing your business and your efforts to match that, to show up for them and to find them so that you are, as you said, cultivating your sales pipeline.
Yes.
Right? Your leads are generating, you're moving people through the leads, but you're also moving them through your value ladder.
Yes.
Right? What's next? What do they need next? Okay, let's get that product ready for them or that service ready. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a very, I call it a very methodical way. I'm a very linear thinker. So I'm always, you know, step one is this, step two is this. And as a teacher, we design with the end in mind. So we figure out where we want our client to be, or where we want our, as a teacher, our student to be, what they need to be able to show us. And then we work backwards to figure out all the things we need to teach them so that they can show us that, or for our clients so that they can get to the end of that transformational journey with us.
Yeah. And it's funny that you said patience is a virtue. As soon as you said that, it brought me back to my childhood because my sister would have to go for different doctor's appointments and stuff for her severe allergies, and we'd be sitting waiting in waiting rooms, and I'd be bored to tears, and my dad would always look at me and say, Kim, patience is a virtue. And finally I got to the point one day, I'm 4 or 5 years old. I don't even know what virtue is, right?
Yeah.
I just look at him and I say, I don't want to be virtuous.
Yeah, right? And I think that is like when we're talking about, we tend to say yes because we feel this desperation. It really is a mindset piece. It really is, saying that, you know what, I don't want to be virtuous. I want to get results. I want to see the fruit of my labor. Do you know what I mean? It's and so sometimes, patience is one thing, but what I work with clients on is taking those intentional steps, getting their business set up so that their patience isn't just them sitting around waiting in a waiting room for somebody to get their appointment done with, it's me waiting for the people to come to me, and then me having systems and processes in place and messaging in place to move them through. And so I can help them and also, have a business that makes money, because that's why we're here.
Yeah. And I think it's not a matter about sitting around twiddling your thumbs, hoping somebody comes. It's about taking that targeted action. It's like planting that seed. You know that if you plant enough seeds, you give it enough water, you give it enough sun, you have a harvest. So in terms of niching down, it's that process of, figuring out who that ideal client is, then getting in front of that ideal client, then nurturing those relationships. And you never know how long, some relationships are instant. They're ready, you're ready, boom, bam, it happens. Other ones take more time, a little bit more sun, a little bit more water. And then all of a sudden, boom, bam, the harvest comes. So it's always about getting in front of those right people and taking the right action, and then being patient for the harvest.
Right. Because I always say the day you plant the seed is not the day you eat the fruit. And that's when we're talking about patience, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about, understanding that the day you plant the seed is not the day you eat the fruit, but knowing that there's the nurturing, there's the watering, there's the making sure it gets the right sunlight, there's the pulling the weeds out, like making sure that that you're going to nurture that seed as it grows. And the patience is in trusting the process, is in waiting for that nurturing process to happen. It's not sitting around twiddling your thumbs, right?
That's
Someone's got to water the plant and getting it ready to harvest.
And understanding that it is a process, and that we live in a relationship-based economy now.
Yes, we do.
And especially as a service person, if you want people to work with you, they've got to know, like, and trust you first, especially in service where the ROI isn't always as visible because it's not a hard physical product, right? So you have to create that know, like, and trust factor to tide you through those beginning stages when people are giving you money and results are not happening yet.
Because they have to be able to trust in you. And that's, as much as we're in a relationship-based economy right now, we're also in a storytelling-based economy, right? Sharing those stories, being open to those stories, not because, and you don't have to share every element of your story, and we don't need to hear about every single piece, but I do need to know that you're a human being, that you're not faking it until you make it. And that you are somebody that I can identify with, right? Because if you take it back to that dating, and it's funny because I married my high school sweetheart. I never really actually did the dating well, but friendships, whatever. You're going to be attracted to people who you understand. And that's why storytelling is so important, because I need to be able to understand you. I need to be able to find common ground with you. And it's the same thing with business.
Yes.
And and with your ideal client, they need to understand that you get what they're going through, because even if you're just starting out and, you may not, maybe I'm your first client. If you understand what I'm going through, and you have shown me that you've got expertise in this field and you can help me, I'm going to be less concerned about how many people you've helped, so much as, hey, I'm willing, I need you. You get me. I know you. I know that we can work together. And sure, I'll be your first client.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly. So I've only got a couple of minutes left. So talk a little bit about the chapter that you wrote for the book, and what was that process like for you sharing your story in that written form?
It really, writing is interesting. Writing comes naturally to me, but it is a very interesting piece when you're trying to put something together. You want to be vulnerable, but you don't want to overshare, right? Where does TMI come in? Especially because what I was sharing was, the chapter that I wrote was called Work-Life Balance, the Holy Grail of Womanhood. So it really talks about my journey with postpartum depression. And I talk about, that standing outside of the bathroom door, waiting for my husband to come out, and all the feelings, but I also dive into how I organize my day. So the Fempire, the departments, that kind of stuff that I was talking about, because I feel like if I am comfortable enough to share my story, I feel like I should. I have a responsibility to, and I do get a lot of women who resonate with it and who will private message me. And I know from that I'm helping people, but it is a very fine balance to figure out, how can I help people and provide value? And I think that's something that business owners go through too, because, 20 years ago it was don't give away too much stuff. And now it's, no, I need to understand you. You don't need to give me all of your secrets, all of your tips and tricks that I'm going to pay you for, but I do need to understand you, and you need to show me a little bit of value so that I can figure out, how you can help me, because that's how in my head I'm going to connect.
Yes.
Right. And so but I think as a writer, it's hard to figure out what's too much information, what's not necessarily need to know. And how to provide value. And I think that's why it's important to work with. Self-publishing is great if you can figure out how to dance those lines. But for me, it was hard. And that's why working with an editor and a publisher is so helpful, because I have somebody outside of the story looking in and helping me figure out, okay, that's not really, that's too much information, or that's not necessarily key to the story or to the value you want to provide at the end.
Yeah, there's two things that, being a publishing company that we focus in on. And there's two aspects we see. And we tend to see this first aspect mostly especially in people who have been abused, is that sharing way too much of the story, right? Mm-hmm. And the other thing is especially when you're dealing with abuse, I mean, your situation was different, but in abuse situations, sometimes the people who have abused you are still alive. So you do need to be very careful about what you write. And you can still write your story without having to go into all the details and naming names and, a lot of those things, because what you can do is, you briefly mention what happened without a ton of detail, but you focus in more on how you felt and how it affected your life. And that's a way that you can write about it in a way that leads to point number two. In your story should always be from victim to victor. Mm-hmm. Your story should never be victim and I'm still a victim. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to have everything together in your life. That's not what I'm talking about. Nope. But when you present it in writing, you have to show that you've gone from point A to point B. You may not be at point Z yet, or Z or Z, whatever way you want to say it, but you have to show that you've made progress and that you're not that victim anymore and you're working your way through. So whether you've already conquered it or you are conquering it, that's how you present your story. You never want to present it that you're a victim and you're still the victim. So in your case, you're not presenting it as, I had postpartum depression. I still have postpartum depression. Life is miserable. And you did it like, okay, I recognized I had a problem and here's the actions I took. And there's probably still some days where I have to battle it, but I took action and now life is better.
Yeah. And I think as you said, everything is a chapter and it's a phase. And sometimes you don't realize that you're not fully through the last chapter until you're working on, the next one, and you're like, oh, there might be some residual something that needs to be dealt with here. But we can't spend our lives looking at the last chapter, right? You can't spend your life looking backwards because you're not going that way.
That's
and
right.
I think that's something that's important to remember in your storytelling and in your sharing. And I think too, like when you talk about people who have been in abuse situations, it's because the only way they've told their stories for years is to people who wanted all the facts and the details, right? And so having somebody who isn't looking at it from a case situation or any of those things and can say, hey, like, let's talk about this. What did you learn? Go deeper than just the facts. Go deeper than, and I think that that's really important when working with an editor. And it's also important when we're thinking about our niche, like we want to go deeper than what's happened to our client or how they feel, even if you're just selling them bookkeeping services, right? Everybody has a money story that's affecting their money mindset, right? So going past what's happened to them to what they're feeling is going to be how you can help them, because we are human beings with emotions.
Yes.
And understanding that process and understanding, those pieces to your client, those deeper pieces than the facts, is going to be very important. And it's the same thing when you're writing a book. You need to be able to relate the facts, but you have to go deeper, because as a reader, I want to go deeper. I want to know more.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, thank you so much, Samantha. Now, tell us a little bit about Fem Builders and how people can get in contact with you.
So you can follow me on social media it's usually at I am Samantha King. On Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, as well as LinkedIn. You can connect with me there. Fempire Builders is also, we are on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and we are usually at Fempire Builders, except for Instagram, where we're at Fempire_Builders. We're an online training center that brings personal and professional development together for women in business. So we're really about showing you the steps, the systems, the processes, giving you the skill sets to build businesses that make money, working with clients you love, while helping you clear out those blocks. Because even with your money, right, we have money mindset blocks, all of those blocks that may be holding you back. And sometimes I find a new block every time I clear up another block, right? But it's so important to have those two things together. And our training center is really empowering women to work on that stuff, as well as our Course Maker membership, which empowers women who want to create their own courses that can then be hosted on our site to help other women. We're really about empowering women and acknowledging that every single woman has something to offer, has some experience or some expertise that the rest of us can benefit from, and we want to give them platforms to do that.
That is awesome. So how would people become, how are women or people become a part of Fem Builders? Where would they go?
So go to fempirebuilders.com to find out about our Course Maker membership. We also have a free Facebook group. So if you go to facebook.com/groups/Fempire Builders, you can be a part of the Fempire business building community. It's a free group. It's great to get involved and have network with like-minded women, have people to bounce ideas off of. And then of course our courses, which are on our training center, are also a great way to be a part of our community, because you will be connecting not only with me and our featured courses and the programs I run, but also through the women, our course makers who have created courses.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Samantha, for being on the show. I've really enjoyed our conversation today. So this has been Samantha King from Fempire Builders and me, Kim Thompson-Pinder, on the Author to Authority podcast. Have a great day, everyone, and we will see you on the very next episode. Bye now.
Yeah.